Okay, class, so we are starting our next new chapter, that is chapter number 5, Separation of Substances. So, class, there are many instances when we notice a substance being separated from a mixture of materials. Tea leaves are separated from the liquid with a strainer while preparing tea. Grains are separated from stalks while harvesting. Milk or curd is churned to separate the butter. As we have learned in chapter 3, we gin cotton to separate its seeds from the fiber. Perhaps you might have eaten salted dalia or poha. If you found that it had chilies in it, you may have carefully taken them out before eating. Suppose you were given a basket containing mangoes and guavas and asked to separate them. What would you do? Pick out one kind and place them in a separate container, right? Seems easy, but what if the material we want to separate are much smaller than mango and guava? Imagine you are given a glass of sand with salt mixed in it. Impossible even to think of separating salt from this mixture by picking out grains of sand by hand. So now we will look how we can separate different things from different substances. So as you can see in the figure, that is table 5.1, why do we separate substances? There are three columns: separation process, and then the purpose for which we do the separation, and then what do we do with the separated components. Okay, so first is number 1, separate stones from rice, and purpose is to separate two different but useful components. Then what we do, we throw away the solid component, that is stones. Then number 2, churning milk to obtain butter. So why we do this? To remove non-useful components. And what we do with the non-useful components? We throw away the impurities. And then coming to number 3, we separate leaves. So tea leaves, to remove impurities or harmful components, and we use both the components. Okay class, so now coming to the next topic, that is the method of separation. So as you can see, we will discuss some of the simple methods of separating substances that are mixed together. You may come across some of these methods being used in day-to-day activities. So our first method is handpicking. So this method of handpicking can be used for separating slightly larger sized impurities like the piece of dirt, stone and husk from the wheat, rice or pulses. The quantity of such impurities is usually not very large. In such situations, we find that the handpicking is a convenient method of separating substances. Okay class, now coming to the next topic, that is threshing. You must have seen bundles of wheat or paddy stalks lying in fields after harvesting the crop. Stalks are dried in the sun before the grain is separated from them. Each stalk has many grain seeds attached to it. Now, imagine the number of grain seeds in hundreds of bundles of stalk lying in the field. How does the farmer separate grain seeds from those bundle of stalks? So here we use the threshing method. The process that is used to separate grain from the stalk, etc., is threshing. In this process, the stalks are beaten to free the grain seeds. Sometimes the threshing is done by the help of bullocks. Machines are also used to thresh large quantities of grains. Now coming to the next heading, as you can see, it is winnowing. So the method of separating components of a mixture is called winnowing. Winnowing is used to separate heavier and lighter components of a mixture by wind or by blowing air. This method is commonly used by farmers to separate lighter husk particles from heavier seeds of grain. The husk particles are carried away by the wind and the seeds of grain get separated and form a heap near the platform of winnowing. The separated husk is used for many purposes such as fodder for the cattle. Now coming to the next topic class, that is sieving. So sometimes we may wish to prepare a dish with flour. Flour means atta or maida. We need to remove the impurities and bran that may be present in it. What do? We use a sieve and pour the flour into it. Sieving allows the fine flour particles to pass through the holes of the sieve while the bigger impurities remain on the sieve. In a flour mill, impurities like husk and stones are removed from wheat before grinding it. Usually, a bagful of wheat is poured on a slanting sieve. The sieving removes piece of stone, stalk, and husk that may remain with the wheat after threshing and winnowing. Now coming to the next heading class, that is sedimentation, decantation and filtration. You have read about this in the last class also, in your previous class. So sometimes it may not be possible to separate components of a mixture by winnowing and handpicking. For example, there may be lighter impurities like dust or soil particles in rice or pulses. How are such impurities separated from rice or pulses before cooking? Rice or pulses are usually washed before cooking. When you add water to these, the impurities like dust and soil particles get separated. These impurities go into water, which becomes a little muddy. Now, what will sink to the bottom of the vessel, rice or dust? And why? Have you ever observed that? When the heavier component in a mixture settles after water is added to it, the process is called sedimentation. When the water along with the dust is removed, the process is called decantation. Okay class, so as you can see, sedimentation and decantation figure is given here, that is figure 5.8. And class, about the filtration, it is the process in which the solid particles in a liquid or a gaseous fluid is removed by the use of a filter medium or a filter paper that permits the fluid or the liquid to pass through but retains the solid particle. This is known as filtration. Generally, we filter tea before having it. We take a strainer and keep the tea leaves particles behind and drink the liquid portion of the tea. Now coming to the next topic class, as you can see, is evaporation. So the process of conversion of water into its vapor is called evaporation. The process of evaporation takes place continuously wherever the water is present. This is used when we want to separate the salt from the water. Okay, the seawater contains many salt mixed in it. One of these salt is the common salt. When the seawater is allowed to stand in the shallow pits, water gets heated by the sun and slowly turns into water vapor through evaporation. In few days the water evaporates completely, leaving behind the solid salts. The common salt is then obtained from this mixture of salt by further purification. As you can see here, class, the figure 5.12, obtaining salt from the seawater, shows how the evaporation process is used to get salt. That's all for today's class. I hope that all of you have understood it well. Thank you class.